Okay, let's get into this. For this deep dive, we are going to unpack one of the most, I think, remarkable and strategically insightful accounts to come out of this conflict.
Absolutely. We're talking about the testimony of Eitan Mor.
Eitan was a security guard at the Nova Music Festival. On October 7th, he was taken captive and spent, well, slightly over a year in Gaza.
And the sources we're using his public recounts, they are just a staggering trove of critical knowledge, not just about survival, but about enemy operations.
Yeah, when we talk about knowledge extraction, Eitan's experiences, well, it's gold.
It is. I mean, think about it. Someone who has spent over 12 months in the absolute epicenter of the conflict, totally isolated, under constant duress.
It's more than just memory at that point.
It moves way beyond recollection. His account becomes this hardened operational and psychological analysis.
It gives us a continuous real-time window into Hamas's strategy.
Right? And their morale as they endured the military camp. And maybe the most critical thing, their unvarnished political perspective on Israeli society and, the hostage negotiations.
So our mission here for you, listeners, is to navigate this. And it is emotionally difficult material. Let's be clear about that. But we're not doing it for sensation.
No. The goal is to distill the enduring insights that only a long-term captive could possibly.
We're unpacking his entire journey, from the chaos of that morning to his views on national politics. And we're really focusing on the tactical realities.
And the incredible psychological tools he had to deploy to survive it all.
But before we step back into the chaos of October 7th, I think it's instructive to look at where Eitan is today.
It really is. He's in Tel Aviv, and he is intensely focused on recovery.
The small details of his return tell you so much about his state of mind.
Right. Finding good coffee, actually enjoying food again, walking his dog. It all speaks to a very deliberate, a very grounded approach to rehabilitation.
I found that detail about his dog just a really powerful.
Me too. He mentioned that the first time he saw her after he was released, she didn't recognize.
Probably all the noise in the crowd.
Right. But the second time, she leaped on him instantly.
That slow process of recognition, even from, a dog that loves him unconditionally.
It just underscores the monumental trauma he endured. It shows you the profound changes a year in darkness can inflict on a person, the distance he's traveled.
And when you hear him talk about his current psychological state, he frames it so clearly.
He says, I don't focus on the past. I look only to the future.
Any lingering issues, he just accepts. He calls them natural, given the circumstances.
And the core mindset is one of just overwhelming gratitude. His words were thankful for every moment.
And that focus on acceptance and gratitude, that ability to instantly pivot away from denial and just straight towards pragmatic survival.
That is the defining characteristic of his time in captivity.
But to really get the depth of that psychological strength, we have to start at the beginning. Let's go back to the early morning of October 7th, the moment all order just collapsed. So Agson's morning starts, and he's working security at the Nova Festival. His job in the hours before the attack was completely mundane.
Totally. Making sure people didn't sneak in for free. He even said he was unaware he was that close to the Gaza envelope.
The shift from, a party atmosphere to pure survival must have been instantaneous.
He recounts that the initial missiles were, a disturbance. But the real signal, the true signal of terror, was the arrival of the first wounded people.
People who had escaped a massacre they didn't even understand yet.
Exactly. And that signal was then immediately amplified by the authorities on site.
Eitan observed police officers arriving in hysteria. That's a crucial detail.
It is. It shows the scale of the shockwave hitting even trained force.
They were just tearing down the security fences, yelling at everyone to evacuate, thinking at first it was, a small terror attack?
A smaller, localized attack, yeah. And it was in this initial wave of chaos that Eitan went from being a security employee to a rescuer.
He jumped into a small security jeep with the head of security, a guy named Elkanah Fetterman, and his friend Elikir.
Right. And while they were driving out, Eitan used his local knowledge to direct some friends who were escaping onto a specific dirt path.
A move he later confirmed saved their lives.
But his own attempt at escape was cut short, a moment of real sacrifice.
Elkanah Fetterman, the security head, he made this impossible life or death.
He decided to drive deeper into the chaos to rescue more wounded people.
And he ordered Eitan and Elikir out of the just said plain, the space is needed for casualties.
And that one moment, that single instruction, it defined their fate.
So Eitan and Elikir stayed behind near a kind of makeshift police and military command post where injured people were gathering.
And Elikir, who was a former military medic, he then made the choice to go back into a tent closer to the party to treat the wounded.
And it was there that he was murdered.
It's just tragic. For Eitan, the relative safety of that command post, it just evaporated.
It was around 8 a.m., so maybe 2-3 hours after the first shot.
And terrorists began firing heavily on their position from the main road.
The whole area just became a death trap. Eitan, along with about 30 others, they just fled, seeking cover in a small valley, a ditch.
And what stands out here, I mean, it's just credible, is the sense of moral duty Eitan had, even as he was running for his life.
As they were fleeing, he saw bodies on the ground.
And he stopped. He actually stopped, turned back with his friend Ron Brzezowski, who's later captured with him.
Compelled to move the dead.
He explained why. He said he wanted to hide one body in a hole because he believed that if they were left exposed, they might be, and these are his words, kidnapped or abused.
That is just a horrifying insight. It means he understood the scope of the violence went beyond murder. It's about desecration.
They tried to do this dangerous, incredible act.
Yeah.
But as they were returning, the situation just became critical.
3 armed terrorists, suddenly just 30 meters away.
And they immediately opened fire. Eitan described hearing the bullets flying right past his head as they just ran full speed.
Then they saw a chance, a possible escape, a security golf cart.
He had seconds, maybe, to decide, risk starting it or not.
And he decided against it. Instantly.
And his reasoning shows this really calculated assessment of the tactical reality.
The main road was already seized. They would have been shot the second they tried to turn the engine.
It would have been a death sentence. Rejecting that false hope was pure survival instinct.
And this brings us right to the moment of capture, which highlights a really crucial, dark distinction.
Yes. Ron Brzezowski, his friend, was caught first, but not by Hamas fighters.
He was caught by 5 individuals Eitan described as uninvolved Gazans.
Civilians who had crossed the border and just decided to join the attack.
Eitan was overwhelmed just a moment later. He was caught by 2 attackers. He fought back briefly.
And then was swarmed by 8 more of these intervening individuals. And this is the detail that you just have to highlight.
They weren't soldiers.
Not uniformed fighters. They were civilian, opportunistic attackers, armed not with military rifles, but with hammers, saws, knives, other tools.
They beat him severely.
That toolbox detail is so critical. It shifts the narrative from an organized military action to this opportunistic, civilian-led brutality.
Suggests a much broader societal participation in what happened.
And it was right then, beaten and trapped, that the largest of these civilian captors gave him the ultimatum in English.
You either die or go to Gaza.
And his decision was immediate, final, Gaza. He knew the fight was over.
And then comes this bizarre, surreal moment that we only know about because of the photos.
He's put into a Hamas vehicle. Now it's the uniformed military wing.
They're surrounding him, cheering, shouting, Allahu Akbar.
And they immediately start taking selfies with him, documenting their victory.
And Eitan, captured, beaten, facing the camera, he gives
an action that was so widely misinterpreted, people thought it was defiance.
He clarified later it was the complete opposite.
It was instant psychological acceptance. He realized in that moment, I am going to eat shept in Gaza now, and I will deal with what comes.
That psychological pivot is remarkable.
If defiance is fire, Eitan chose ice. It tells you about the cognitive speed required to survive that moment. Denial, anger, bargaining, all of that would have wasted energy.
It would have made him vulnerable.
Exactly. He immediately accepted the new reality, shed his old identity, and just prepared his mind for the ordeal ahead. It's the foundational mental lock that allowed him to endure the next year. So the moment Eitan chose Gaza, the physical and psychological torment really began. He's moving from the shock of capture to the grinding, unstable reality of long-term captivity.
He's immediately transported across the border to bait hunt.
And the first step in his dehumanization is being forced to shed his
and put on Gazan attire, a hat, and what he called an
and then, unbelievably, he's taken to the Indonesian hospital. But the real horror started just after.
For approximately 3 straight days, Eitan was tied with his hands behind his back.
Just imagine the sheer physical torment of that posture. They'd only untie his hands, move them forward for a moment, just so he could eat.
He described those 72 hours as feeling like 2 solid.
That's a clear sign of the extreme psychological toll, the time distortion that sensory deprivation and constant pain inflict on a person.
And then we get to this bizarre, almost unbelievable moment of relief. He called it the up.
One of the guards, who spoke English, saw Eitan struggling to rest while tied up.
So this guard makes a hole in the wall, attaches a metal chain, and lets Eitan chain only his left hand to the wall.
And Eitan's reaction is a terrifying illustration of survival psychology. He said he was happy as a dog.
That small concession, moving from total agonizing restraint to just being restrained by a single...
It gave him a massive measure of relief. It really showcases the depth of degradation they were inflicting.
Where a metal chain becomes a lug.
And the threshold for comfort is set impossibly low. It's a masterclass in psychological control.
Break him down completely, then offer a tiny sliver of humanity.
Or maybe just a utilitarian move to keep him functional. But either way, it reminds him exactly who controls the lever of his comfort.
And while he's enduring this isolation, the physical abuse was sporadic, but he said it was intense.
He recounts being shocked with an electric cape. He described it as insanely painful.
But fortunately,
But the psychological insult of losing his personal thing sometimes overshadowed the physical.
he actually joked that the pain of having his new, expensive 800 shekel shoes stolen hurt him more than the electrocution.
It's dark gallows humor, but it speaks volumes, the anger over losing control, losing your property in that chaos.
He also described an incident early on. It was about food ration.
Right, he was caught trying to steal pita bread by a guard.
And the punishment was brutal. The guard tied him up, punched him repeatedly in the face and body.
But the aftermath is what's so remarkable. The guard later found Eitan and apologized for the beat.
That mix, extreme cruelty and then this unexpected apology, defines the psychological inconsistent cap.
It keeps the prisoner completely unbalanced. You never know what to expect. And it subtly reinforces the guard's power. They can deliver the beating, and they can also deliver the forgiveness.
But I think the most defining physical characteristic of his captivity was just the sheer instability of it all.
Imposed by the war, yeah. Eitan was moved approximately 40 times.
40 times. In just over a year. Let's analyze the psychological weight of that again.
A prisoner relies on routine, the timing of meals, the rhythm of the guards, the layout of the room. It gives you some semblance of psychological structure.
And being moved 40 times means that routine was constantly denied. He never had a safe psychological...
It is exhausting. Every move means a new threat assessment, a new cell, new guards, new rules, a constant heightened state of fear. It's designed to prevent any mental stability.
He spent his time in solitary, punctuated only by these incredibly stressful, disorienting relocations, always fleeing the advancing Israeli.
And he recounted one specific, terrifying close call.
This is on the 21st night of the war. They were in Rimmel, in central Gaza.
He was in a home, and a nearby high-rise building was bombed. The blast was so powerful that the ceiling of the house he was in collapsed around.
The escape after that was just pure, desperate chaos.
He and his two captors immediately ran, and this is where we get the most chilling, the tactical.
The guard put his loaded weapon, complete with a magazine, onto Eitan and told him, "Run behind me."
So just picture that. You're Eitan, you're running through a bombed-out, war-torn city with a functional, loaded weapon strapped to your own person being commanded by your captor.
He admitted he immediately considered using it.
Of course, but he chose not to. And the deep analysis here is why? Why not take that shot at freedom?
Because he realized that the guard, his jailer, was at the same time his only hope for immediate survival.
If he had shot that guard, he'd have been an Israeli captive, armed, alone, disoriented, in the heart of Gaza City.
A target for every Hamas fighter and opportunity.
Exactly. By staying with the guard, he was still, in a way, protected by the enemy's structure, their knowledge of the escape routes.
It was a choice between immediate certain death alone or a very slim long-term chance of survival while tethered to the enemy.
And that calculus, it crystallized his entire psychological coping strategy. He chose to look only forward. He deliberately rejected focusing on the past, recognizing survival required a future-focused mentality.
Which brings us back to that profound, almost counterintuitive piece of survival psychology.
The acceptance of a long-term future in captivity, yeah. Eitan saw the peace talks failing repeatedly. He saw that the Israeli government was committed to defeating Hamas.
And he concluded that he was likely to be there for a very long time, or he would die there.
And that loss of hope for a quick release was, paradoxically, liberating.
Because hope, in that extreme context, becomes a liability.
It anchors you to a timeline that isn't yours. It's constantly setting you up for disappointment, for a psychological crack.
By accepting the permanence of his situation, by preparing to die there, he reclaimed the only control he had.
Control over the present. He stopped thinking about when he would be released and simply focused on surviving today.
And beyond that mental fortitude, he also developed practice.
He started his captivity knowing maybe 20 words of Arabic.
And by the end, he had advanced enough to read and write the language.
That level of fluency, achieved under such duress, it must have given him a much deeper understanding of the conversation environment.
And just to keep us grounded in the human element of it all, we have to return to the detail.
Right. Eitan, a known coffee lover, noted the truly dreadful quality of what he was.
He joked that at times the coffee was mixed with hummus and tahini.
Even when you're facing death, the standard of your daily ritual is an observable, frustrating point.
A truly human anchor point in a completely inhuman situation. So with over a year spent forced proximity to his captors, Eitan gained this unique, extended immersion into the Hamas mindset, the broader Gazan pop.
So now we shift focus. We move from the personal survival story to the systemic intent of the enemy, drawing on these really difficult observations.
What Eitan provides isn't just propaganda analysis from a distance.
No, it's lived evidence of their core belief. He was under their roof. He was observing their actions, hearing their unfiltered aspirations. That's what makes his testimony strategically invaluable.
And the most disturbing insight, for me, concerns the multi-generational nature of the content.
The video he was shown, it just perfectly encapsulates the severity of the anti-Israel education children are receiving there.
He saw a small child being given a toy mortar. Not a plastic car, but specifically the 125mm type used by Hamas fighters.
And the child was instructed to fire it while yelling Allahu Akbar.
That isn't just severe education. It's intentional. It's systematic indoctrination.
It trains children to view weapons, violence, and the duty to fight as interwoven parts of their play and their religious obligation.
It provides a terrifying insight into the confidence Hamas has about it. They are actively manufacturing their next generation of fighters.
And that confidence manifested in explicit threats. Eitan reported that several Hamas members told him directly, without any hesitation, that they would execute another October 7th.
And this wasn't bravado shouted in a moment of victory?
No, this was their stated future plan. It confirms that the October 7th attack was viewed by them as a strategic model to be repeated.
Which feeds directly into Hamas's core belief in their own enduring existence.
They clearly stated to Eitan that Israel would not succeed in eliminating Hamas until the last Palestinian in Gaza was either killed or expelled.
So in their worldview, there's no possibility of surrender, no negotiated cessation of resistance.
It's existential and it's binary. Their total victory or their total martyrdom and displays. This rigidity explains why military pressure alone is so unlikely to dismantle their ideological structure.
Now, regarding the dynamics with his individual captors, Eitan noted something interesting. He said overall, he felt he was treated relatively well.
But he was very quick to qualify that. He said it depended entirely on the specific location and the specific guards assigned to him at that moment.
Which points towards some kind of underlying formal organizational doctrine within Hamas.
Right. Eitan noted that their protocol dictated a respectful treatment of prisoners, but this so-called respect was often weaponized. It came with heavy religious and political boasting.
They were constantly trying to seize the moral high ground by comparing themselves to Israel.
They'd boast that Islam is a religion of mercy, and then they'd contrast their careful treatment of Eitan with their perception of how Israeli Minister Ben-Gvir treated Palestinian prisoners.
So they're attempting to morally validate their actions, even as they're holding a civilian hostage.
Eitan realized very quickly that his survival depended on silence. He got some advice from another captive, and he adopted the strategy.
Don't be smart, don't be right, Mart.
Which meant absolute obedience and neutrality.
Avoiding arguments ensured he received slightly better treatment. Survival trumped any desire for intellectual or...
In that environment, being right could get you severely beat, but being smart ensured your continued existence.
He also had a front-row seat to the war's impact on Hamas's operational morale.
He observed that they definitely experienced difficult periods. They felt the military pressure intensely. I mean, the 40 moves he endured were direct evidence of their instability.
However, and this is the key takeaway he stressed, despite the pressure, despite the difficult period,
they do not give up. The ideological commitment remains rigid, unyielding, fueled by their belief.
Finally, Eitan offered some context on the stated goal for the October 7th attack.
He mentioned that the entire Gaza operation was planned, quote, to free Al-Aqsa, supposedly.
Yeah. So this frames the assault not merely as a random act of terror, but as a religiously motivated event, one aimed at centralizing the conflict around key holy sites, giving it a much greater ideological scope. We're now going to approach the most sensitive and maybe the most strategically critical part of Eitan Mor's...
Yes, this deals directly with the internal political dynamics in Israel during his captivity, specifically the impact of public pressure campaigns and the protests.
And we have to be very clear here. Our job is to impartially report the claims and strategic observation that Eitan and his father share.
These observations provide a difficult but absolutely necessary insight into how Hamas analyzes and, well, attempts to manipulate Israeli internal politics.
Eitan confirmed his captors were fully aware of the public demonstration.
And they specifically showed him videos of the large Saturday night protests happening in Israel.
But the most crucial detail of this entire deep dive comes next. Eitan provided a direct and really stunning anecdote.
At one point, after a particularly grueling session of interrogation in a tunnel, a Hamas officer approached.
But the officer didn't continue the interrogation. Instead, he sought Eitan's consultation.
And the consultation was laser-focused on the internal Israeli divide. The Hamas officer asked Eitan directly,
how can we get more people to come to the Saturday night protest?
Let's just pause on the magnitude of that claim.
For Eitan, he interprets this interaction as irrefutable proof that the organized public protests served Hamas's strategic interest.
Hamas clearly viewed the protests not as humanitarian pleas, but as a powerful mechanism.
One that applied maximum pressure directly onto the Israeli government, creating internal chaos and leverage for their negotiations.
And this specific incident directly informed Eitan's own view on the entire hostage release campaign.
He openly stated his belief that the protests harmed the country.
And he supports the hardline or hawkish stance taken by his own father, Eitan Mor. He calls his father's position the most Zionist act possible under the circumstance.
The core of the Mor family was this: Eitan should only return through the decisive defeat and significant weak Hamas.
Eitan internalized this belief while he was in captivity. He argued that Hamas should not be allowed to retain the strategic strength it had on October 7th just to secure his release.
His sense of national duty was just profound. He stated he was prepared to stay longer for the sake of achieving the strategic goal.
And he asked, rhetoric, who am I to ask to leave when our brave soldiers are fighting?
That is an incredibly difficult moral calculus, placing national security above your own immediate personal salvation.
And Eitan Mor, Eitan's father, provided so much context for his own unyielding stance and the pressure he endured.
Zvika insisted publicly that the country must defeat Hamas and not cave in under any circumstances to their demands.
And his reasoning was strategically focused. He believed this firm line was the only way to secure Eitan's return and, crucially, to prevent future suffering for other parents by dismantling Hamas's ability to repeat the attack.
He viewed his stance as a necessary long-term sacrifice.
And Zvika recounted the aggressive campaign that was waged against him and other parents who took a similar stance.
They were accused of not caring about them.
He reflected on the irony of it. He said there is no greater hell than having a child in captivity, and that his resolve was driven by a deep protective love combined with this profound sense of duty to the state.
Zvika concluded that he believes invisible hands responsible for chaos and political division in the country stirred deeply into the hostage.
He completely concurred with his son's assessment that the protests, regardless of their intent, ultimately served Hamas's strategic goals by creating political pressure and internal division within Israeli society.
But despite all the controversy around his political, Eitan's testimony ends on this note of intense family pride and gratitude toward the state and its...
He expressed deep pride in his father's principles, calling Zvika a superstar and an inspiration for his unwavering stance.
And in a crucial counterpoint to the frustration felt by some other families, Eitan expressed profound, explicit gratitude to the state, the government, the prime minister, and the military for ensuring.
He emphasized the comprehensive support they've provided since his release, stating, "I have no complaints. I say thank you." His experience has fostered this incredibly powerful sense of patriotism and loyalty.
Eitan Mor's deep dive it's just a masterclass in resilient survival. From that instant, terrifying pivot to acceptance right after capture, to the mental architecture required to endure 40 moves and months of ice.
What stands out most to me is the conscious decision from both Eitan and his father to prioritize strategic national goals above the immediate crippling agony of their personal suffering.
The endurance is truly remarkable, and now Eitan is dedicated to fulfilling what he sees as his responsibility to those who can learn from his year in Gaza.
His short-term goal is very clear. Share his story, share its insights with as many people as possible.
And he's taking that passion for life, and he's applying it to his future. He plans to open a boutique coffee event business with a chef partner.
Which is such an act of reclaiming normalcy. And it's ironically driven by his frustration over the hummus and tahini coffee standards he was forced to endure.
But his hope for the future, it transcends the personal or the business fit. It's a plea, a desperate plea for national.
He stressed his wish for Israelis to be united, regardless of political affiliation, right or left against the enemy, just as he observed the enemy is united against.
He saw the division from the enemy's perspective, and he knows just how effectively they can weaponize.
And if we circle back one last time to Eitan Mor, Eitan's father, he described the moment of their reunion.
For 2 years, Zvika had held himself together, publicly maintaining a strong, clear, principled position. Like a machine, he said.
But when he saw his son alive, that entire structure just shattered. Zvika described his own reaction as a wounded animal's cry.
A sudden, uncontrollable release of 2 years of immense, suppressed psychological cost. The ordeal wasn't just borne by the captive, it was borne by the entire family who had to choose duty over desire.
In Eitan's experience, it fundamentally changed his relationship with language, with belief. He noted that since childhood, he recited the daily prayer, "He who releases the imprisoned."
He said he'd always considered it an abstract, historical.
But now, after his profound personal experience, he sees that prayer and the prayer, "He who heals the sick," as holding a deep, undeniable, new personal truth.
He had to face the most extreme pressure possible to understand the full, devastating meaning of a simple phrase he'd said his whole life.
And this leaves us with a final thought for you, the learner, to to carry forward? What concepts or phrases or moral beliefs do you take for granted in your daily life?
What ideas do you only know in the abstract that are perhaps just waiting for a moment of intense pressure or loss or personal experience to reveal their full, profound, and undeniable something to reflect on as you digest Eitan Mor's incredible journey of survival?